A new trend is celebrated in the drag queen community. Let kids be queens. We'll talk about drag kids on the program today. Plus, an Ivanka Trump lookalike is vacuuming at a performance art gallery. What's that all about? If we have toxic masculinity, then what in the world is good masculinity? Hello there, Terry here on Think America, where we reason first and then converse. Welcome to the show. This is America's Radio Town Hall. I'm Terry Gilberg. We have thought-provoking conversation starters to kick off every week. This week is no different. I invite real Americans to come to the microphone and chew on all of these thought-provoking conversation starters with me every week. This week is no different again. Mitch joins us. Mitch, hello. He is a small business owner from the Southwest. Nice to have you.
I appreciate being here. Thank you.
And Megan will be along later on in the program. Let's get right to it on this week. I want to start first on this Ivanka Trump issue. There is a lookalike now who vacuums up crumbs, like breadcrumbs, on a carpet at a performance art gallery in Washington, D.C. It opened February 1st, and you can go in the evenings and watch this model, kind of mannequin, life-sized model looking just like Ivanka Trump, doing a vacuum thing. It's hard to know exactly what it is because, of course, the idea is it's art, so therefore it is make-believe to an extent. But she's a real person. Is there anything wrong, though, with a woman vacuuming her carpet floor? That would be the first question. So if there isn't, why mock Ivanka Trump?
Well, I think this is a classic case of MMD, marked mental deficiency on the part of the artist in this gallery. I mean, what is it about this woman that scares the left so much? Is it because she's happy being a woman? Is it because she's happy being married? I just don't understand this. And yes, I do think they may have got out over their skis on this and insulted women who do that.
Well, on the one hand, the feminists and those on the left that are mocking this, they mock the model, but what they're really trying to do is mock Ivanka Trump. So the way they mock the model is they take a pile of breadcrumbs and continue to throw it toward the floor, and she stands there robotically and vacuums up the breadcrumbs. So on the one hand, they would say there's nothing wrong with a woman vacuuming her carpet floor, which is a question I posed to you. But on the other hand, there's something terribly wrong, I guess, with Ivanka Trump, or at least the mannequin, the life-size mannequin, doing it. And so there's a conflict there. In the performance art exhibit, and by the way, this is at the Cultural DC's Gallery in Washington, the viewers are asked to answer these questions. That's how come I know some of their answers, Mitch. The exhibit showcases Ivanka, the lookalike. She wears a pink dress with bows, stiletto shoes. She vacuums the carpet, and she continues to do it at 2-hour shifts before she gets to take a break. So I think just there's a problem just initially with what they're trying to say in the performance art. They say there's nothing wrong with a woman vacuuming her carpet floor. In fact, women, watch me roar. We can do anything. We've broken the glass ceiling, et cetera, et cetera. We can certainly vacuum. And yet there's something wrong with Ivanka. So I think they have a problem with the exhibit to begin with.
Well, I'd like to think that your explanation is exactly what it is, but I guess maybe I'm just a little bit more cynical. I actually think this whole thing is about basically poking fun at her. I was reading some comments from both the gallery and the person who created the exhibit. And one of the things they said is the show was inspired by a figure whose public persona incorporates an almost comically wide range of feminine identities. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with being multidimensional? I mean, I'm impressed by that myself, but for the record, Terry, I should tell you that when I was married, I actually did the vacuuming. And I'm a guy, so it's not that vacuuming's a problem for anybody or it's gender specific. My wife used to love to tell people that the reason I vacuumed is because people were appalled. They were, he vacuums? She said, yeah, you ever seen a golf course being mowed? That's how he does it at perpendicular angles. It's perfect. so I let him vacuum. So
she's smart.
It's not just a gender thing here.
She got the perfect look to the pile of her carpet.
Exactly.
Back to the multidimensional that you referenced with Ivanka Trump. She is a daughter. She is a wife. She is a mother. She is a sister. She was a model, or she still looks like a model. She's a working woman, and she's blonde. These are all the things that they apparently don't like. So to your point, there is a criticism with being multidimensional, very diverse, being able to cross-pollinate in different roles, wear different hats, if you will. And this is what I suppose they're jealous of. That part I don't understand. Where's the jealousy? Because isn't that what women are supposed to be? All things to all people. And yes, watch me roar. We women can do all of these things. So why the complaint? Unless it's president's daughter to add to that. And they're so mad at Trump that, of course, they're taking this out on Ivanka. And this is a mock of her because they're still mad at President Trump. And by the way, my particular feeling about being mad at Trump, this anger that continues to fester, I've come to believe they're not mad at him per se. They're mad that he won. Now, some people say, oh, he's terrible, 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 and they're just mad at him. If Trump lost, they would chummy up to him. He's part of the Hollywood community, did The Apprentice. He's a big New York socialite, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and was a former Democrat. It's the fact that he won. And this constant trickle down to his family, always attacking. Barron will be next as we go into 2020, I do believe.
Well, I believe you're absolutely correct. Trump committed the cardinal sin. He's pulling back the drape and letting the people see the machine behind the magician. And they do not like that. I mean, they had a sweet deal. All these bags of money rolling in from the various groups, K Street, Wall Street, all the hedge fund managers, people like Soros. They don't really want a flashlight on that. So, yes, I think he can do no wrong. So in any event, the point is, I agree with you. The author said that it's funny, it's pleasurable, it makes us feel powerful. Well, how does demeaning a woman make you feel powerful? This I think they got their wires crossed on this one. And some statement they made, and I'm paraphrasing, something about questioning their own complicity in her role playing. She looks to me like the poster girl for multitasking. I don't get it. I'll be honest.
What do you make of this as art? Do you have any gut feeling about this is performance art. Surely someone is performing. She is performing the art, I suppose, in quotes, of vacuuming a carpet as this kinetic motion of people throwing crumbs constantly at her feet. And she vacuums them up. Is that supposed to be we, the people, are crumbs and she vacuums us up and we just go away? That's the only thing that comes to mind when I look at this as something signifying something artistic. What do you make of performance art this way? It
just dawned on me with your statement. Those are Nancy Pelosi's crumbs that they're throwing on the carpet that we got on our little $1,000 deal. That must be what this is. The optics on this, I think, are horrible. I thought this was a stretch as a fixed piece, but as a performance art, or I'd rather call it a performance act. I don't know how much art there is to vacuuming, but the whole thing it's only running 14 days. That tells me everything I need to know. If it was spectacular and doing well, I think it'd run longer than that.
I don't know if this is art or not. The definition of art is anybody's guess anymore. There used to be pretty good definitions of art, and we would be taught it in school and so forth. But anymore with art, especially contemporary art, it's hard to define, or at least I don't quite understand the definitions when they're presented. And this kind of falls under that for me too. So I have to say, first of all, is this art? Secondly, are we supposed to assume that this Ivanka character does regular chores? Because that would be a compliment to her, rather than sort of put her on this pedestal whereby she's vacuuming up we the people, and we the people are crumbs, and she gets rid of us, being the elitist, I think that they're trying to say, and yet she's doing regular chores. And the third thing that comes to mind is, are we complicit in this role playing by going and seeing this? You know, you can choose not to go too. So there's all these kind of questions, I think, that need to be asked. There's a fourth element too, Mitch, and that is she stands in the heels for 2-hour sessions. Well, as a woman, when I was younger, I would stand in heels far longer than that. So women are used to this. I know Melania, when she goes out in the public with the president, she has to stand at big rallies or walk around in 4 or 5-inch heel, 4-inch heels probably. I'm sure her back hurts also at the end of a long day. So Ivanka can do this as well. And she's slender and she's tall and she appears to be quite athletic. What is wrong with all of that? And then, of course, the model takes a break after 2 hours. But it was specific that she stands for 2 hours. So I'm not altogether sure what that all means. But these, I guess, are things that provoke thought. And thus we're talking about it on the show because we do thought provoking, right? What do you think about some of those ideas?
I think that all of those have potential merit. I do think if this was designed to slam her, I think it's going to have the opposite effect because everybody I know that has mentioned this actually has more sympathy towards her for the way they're treating her. I think if the goal was to diminish her, it's not working.
The exhibit, by the way, showcases her, again, I want to stress this, in a pink dress. So that's chosen for a reason. But then again, the pink pussycat hats, right, that all the women wear at the Women's March with bows and stiletto shoes. Not sure what that significance is. Vacuums crumbs off a plush pink carpet. Not sure why pink is evoked all the time, but that's the artistic license, I suppose. These are all things, I suppose, that when you go to the gallery, you're supposed to think about, and it spurs on conversation. And by the way, there's nothing that's ugly about this figure. Ivanka, a lot of people think she is just drop dead gorgeous. Of course, beauty's in the eye, right? So I'm not sure the artist is achieving what the artist wants to achieve because I don't think it was designed to be a compliment. And yet it's coming across perhaps as a compliment.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it was definitely not designed to be a compliment. But, the critics of this have come out and said that, here they are over sexualizing, her figure and then ignoring her hard work that she's done. I mean, she has been a businesswoman, is a businesswoman. She's a White House advisor. It's not like she doesn't have a resume. I don't think we can reduce her to somebody who runs a vacuum.
What would you think if it was Michelle Obama on display?
The building would be on fire.
Check it out on the internet. I'm sure there's not too much that we didn't cover in this. She just is a beautiful model, looks like Ivanka, vacuuming a pink carpet. I'm Terry Gilbert. You're listening to Think America, thinkamericaradio.com. Find our podcast there at our website. Welcome back to Think America. There's a new trend being celebrated in the drag queen community, but I will say it is disturbing to many, many parents. And the trend isn't just transgender. We've heard of transgender now for many years. It is instead drag kids. I almost said drag queens because that's the term that we already know about. But drag kids is a different phenomenon. And it is being celebrated, kids being dressed up in full garb of their biologically opposite gender. Now, the advocates of drag kids are not only supportive of this, folks, but they encourage kids to get publicity for this. Go and show off is what some parents are saying. So it begs this question. Why is this being introduced to children? Is it a way to push for transgender with kids? And why are some school districts allowing drag queens to come into public schools, their schools, and present themselves as a drag queen, introduce kids to what this is all about, and read stories to them as if this is some normal, everyday, average thing. It's a person coming to read a story to the class. Mitch, delve into any of those threads there on this topic.
This is one of those topics where I'm not even sure I know where to go with this. I have so many sort of thoughts running in all different directions at the same time. I think it's going to be, I remember what it was like to be an 8 to 10-year-old boy. You're already confused about a lot of things because lots of things are starting to change. And it seems to me if you're going to throw them into this kind of environment, you're running the risk that they may well grow up even more confused. As far as whether or not this constitutes child abuse, which is one of the angles that I've heard discussed on this, I suppose that depends on who you ask. But I think, sadly, if the left approves of it, they're never going to consider it child abuse, regardless of what the rest of us might think. For me, I would need to know who was behind this. Is this something the child came up with? Is this something the parents, sort of steered them into? Because if the parents are steering them into it, I think it's a completely different issue than if these kids are coming up with it on their own.
The first I ever heard about it was a news report, I think maybe now a year ago, where a couple of drag queens decided that they were going to do volunteer work and go to schools and be part of sort of little circles of reading. And there they show up. And to many of the kids, they probably thought, wow, this is Halloween. Who is this person? A lot of makeup, a lot of overly dressed, big hair, teased up hair, et cetera, false eyelashes, et cetera, et cetera. And so kids are, because it's so visual, kids were very excited. And then reading to kids and kind of a way of saying, well, we're here too, and we volunteer, and we like your kids just as much as you do. And so here we are, and why turn us away, and et cetera, et cetera. So, all right. That's the first I heard about. But for that even to happen, Mitch, there had to be some backstory, whether it came from parents, whether it came through the school board. That I don't know. I think the first I heard of it was somewhere in Wisconsin. Does that ring a bell to you?
I seem to recall something about drag queens putting on a class somewhere and that being very controversial. I don't remember the state, but I do remember that causing quite a row. If you're young, you're trying to figure out a lot of things. If I could see that if you're thinking you may want to be an actor or something along that line, this is certainly a stretch character-wise, and that would maybe perhaps improve your chops. But I just think that it opens the door for all kinds of abuse. And I'm not talking about the parents necessarily, but if you're in and around an environment like that, I don't know who all's involved in the process. I don't know who's backstage. I don't know what's going on. But I also know that it's getting more and more difficult to be a boy today. These kids read the newspaper, and as you know, we've got an all-out assault on men in this country right now. So the bottom line is they may feel more comfortable being something other than a boy, and if that's the case, then
that's what many parents who are outraged about this, they say they are disturbed because it's introducing in the public schools the question of, well, what is your gender? And kids get very confused. So if you're going to introduce a drag queen that's coming in, you introduce transvestite practices, and you introduce this idea of let's question. A little boy would question his gender. A little girl would question her gender. Not to mention, it puts into play kids showing off. In many ways, the teachers don't want them to show off. They want them to focus on studies. Parents want them to focus on studies. But this is a way of, if you got it, flaunt it. And so here's this idea that get all dressed up and go into parades, go around the class being who you want to be for the day, this fluidity of gender idea and showing it off.
Well, I think that's an important point you raise is if the reaction is such that you get a lot of attention from this, that's liable to become addictive. People do like to be the center of attention. And so this is liable to grow on its own after that. To me, it's just fascinating that this sort of stuff is the focus of what we have going on, given all that's happening in the world right now. But I just remember how challenging it was at that age and all of the things you're beginning to think about. And this notion that you can choose your gender at between 8 and 10 years old, they can't even decide what they want for lunch. I work with young people, and you're not in a position to make that decision at that age.
I'm in agreement with you. It is a questioning of the gender, and then kids get confused, but it is a way to introduce them, even through our schools, into the world of transgender. I'm Terry Gilberg, here with Mitch on Think America, as we reason first and then converse. Be right back. I'm delighted to have John Shin with us. You probably know the name. He's an internationally known speaker. He is the executive producer of The Legacy of Think and Grow Rich, the movie named after the book of the same name. He is an author. He's a trainer. He does a number of TED Talks. He joins us from Los Angeles. John, so nice to have you with us. I know you've inspired millions of people over the course of your career. Hello.
Terry, man, I'm excited to be on your radio show this morning. My goodness.
Nice to have you, and I'm excited to have you. I want to talk in the time that we have about how you inspire people to think and grow rich under this kind of a context. There's a lot of talk about how Americans have become too soft. Our kids are couch potato kids. All they do is look into computers. They're not out there roughing it and so forth. They don't think out of the box. We were talking earlier before the show of how many kids even know cursive, for crying out loud, in their penmanship, and all they do is text with little acronyms and so forth. So my first question to you, as you inspire people about America and being the best they can and getting out there, have Americans lost their grit?
In a lot of ways, I do believe they have. Certainly, we see it within our children today. Every day I go to a restaurant, we see our children that aren't even communicating with their parents. They're playing games, and there's a little bit of weather that goes on, and then all of a sudden it's like they're canceling school, or they don't even have to take an exam and they can make it up a week or two later. So, in a lot of ways, I believe that they are getting a little bit softer and a little weaker in a lot of different areas. Yes.
And what would those areas be? Would it be mental softness? Would it be physical grit? Is it determination? In a prosperous nation, we are reaping the benefits of all that prosperity. And in a lot of ways, we lose our edge. I know my parents of the greatest generation, they had true grit. And didn't they all in the greatest generation? So we profit by that, right? We're a wealthy nation. So in some respects, I don't blame the young, but then it's cyclical. The next generation is going to have to probably dig in to get to the next level of business and the next level of prosperity. Don't you agree? So what areas are we soft in, John?
Let's talk about the mind first. There's no question that a lot of people believe their own BS, and BS is an acronym, and it's their belief system. And I think in the old days, our parents and the former older generation, the wiser generation, they worked so hard because they had such big dreams and big aspirations. And today, I believe that most people have given up on their dreams. They've allowed other people to hijack their dreams, and they're not dreaming big enough. And so, people wonder if the American dream is still alive today. And I believe it is. It's just that people have a very dependent mentality versus an independent mentality. So I think people need to focus. I call it TFA. They need to work on their thoughts and then what they're thinking about. I always ask people, do you ever think about what you think about? What are you thinking about? And if you think about the big things, your dreams and your goals, those will affect the way you feel, and then how you feel will affect the way you act. And so it's very important that we have to get people to start thinking bigger and get more passionate and have some bigger goals.
And that's fine. And you're a walking example of somebody who thought very, very big, but you're also an educated guy. You got a JD, you went to USC, a very fine, premium Ivy League of the West kind of a school. And you just worked so damn hard that you got ahead. A lot of people don't have that combination. So how do they get with their big dreams to the next step?
So one of the things is just obviously association. You know, who do you associate with, and what kind of books do you read, and what kind of, instead of playing games. I mean, I don't think that games will really serve you. I don't think that watching some of the TV shows that we see today, like they were in the old days, that are really helping you to change your behaviors. And so it's very, very important that people start to read the right books, associate with the right kinds of people. But staying at home and, you know, and watching and playing games, what I see a lot of children do today. You know, I met a couple kids a few days ago, and I said, do you guys game? And they said, absolutely. I said, who doesn't? Everybody games. I said, how many hours do you think you game a day? And he says, I don't know. Let me check my phone. And I guess there's some sort of a little thing on their phone where you can actually check the number of hours that you're actually gaming. He's playing about 4.5 hours of gaming a day. You know, so you start to wonder, you know, gosh, if these children are playing 4 or 5 hours a day, you know, how much more productive could they be if they had their parents that had them in piano or guitar or some sort of martial arts or some sort of after-school program where they're involved in socializing with other kids. But I'll tell you what, I think these gaming industries are really hurting the way our children are thinking today.
Well, I would tend to agree with that because I don't see purpose. That's the key word, I think.
Yeah,
purpose
exactly.
with the games. Whereas if you're in martial arts, you got a purpose to make your body better, self-defense and so forth. Piano helps right brain, left brain. Guitar, you know, you're creative when you're playing a musical instrument or whatever it is. Are we teaching kids? What are we doing it for? If we got a motivation, what is the big purpose behind all of this? How do you move the needle? Are we teaching that? And in fact, why move the needle?
Exactly. Totally agree. Everything that you're saying.
So we're not teaching that. Is that what you would say?
Absolutely. We're not teaching that, you know, and the parents right now have to take responsibility, and they have to make better choices for their children. Because, you know, the other day we had another friend come to our house, and, you know, the baby was crying, and I think he must have been maybe 1.5 years or 2 years old. And so what did the parents do? They stuck an iPad right in front of the baby, and the baby shut up. You know, I mean, the baby stopped crying, and you know, they were glued to this, you know, game stubs or some animated, you know, stuff. And then if you really sit there and you watch what the parents have to understand, these games today are so violent, and then we wonder why more and more of these children are becoming so violent. We don't listen to our children. They have so much to say and so much to share. And so the parents, it's so important how parents are parenting their own children these days.
I agree. In a recent interview with a high school teacher, he said that this polar vortex that came across the nation in many, many states only was making kids rather wussy, that they shouldn't have had a snow day. They need to have their butt in the chair with heavy academics, especially those that want to get into good schools. And he got a lot of backlash because the polar vortex in certain regions was very, very dangerous. Now, I understand that you went through quite a harrowing experience yourself, skiing in the Tahoe area amid somewhat of the effects of the polar vortex, and you got out of it. It was very scary. Tell us a little bit about that and how you weren't a wuss getting yourself out of a snowbank. Yeah,
I mean, unfortunately, here we are. We're up in Lake Tahoe, and you know, we were told that there was going to be some snow, but we weren't told that there was going to be a major snowstorm. It was the worst snowstorm that Lake Tahoe had in the last 5 years. And unfortunately, we got caught up in that. And, you know, we had our children, my wife, we had several other of our friends. We were all caught up in this thing. And the first thing we had to acknowledge, you know, we had to accept reality. And once we accepted reality of what our circumstances were, and I'm saying this, I'm not saying that when I say accept reality means that I agree with what's happening at this moment, you know, that this is where I wanted to be. But I had to, at that moment, manage my thoughts. We had to regulate all our emotions. And then we had to start making the right choices and what we were going to do. We had no cell reception, so it was very difficult to get any kind of first responders to get to us. We were stuck in in our situation for about 8 hours with absolutely no food, no water, no nothing. We couldn't get anybody to even see where we were at because the blizzard was it was so bad you couldn't even see your hands in front of your face. But at that moment, we had to make these right decisions, and we had to find out some solutions to help us out and cope with our situation.
And you got out of it. You got to pull your emotions together. You got to pull yourself together, and you got to make the right decision. I'm glad you did the program with us. How do people find you, John?
They can hit me on Instagram. I'm at John Shin Official.
SHIN, not CHIN. Lovely to have you on the program. Terry. I appreciate your time and your good insights. Thank you, John, very much. We'll be in touch. You're listening to Think America. ThinkAmericaRadio.com is where you find our podcasts and download all of them. You can get all of the archive shows and all of these thought-provoking conversation topics. When we come back, traditional masculinity versus toxic masculinity. We're back on Think America. That was John Shin, internationally renowned speaker on American grit. Quick response to that before we move on, Mitch. What did you think?
I agree with him. I think there's been a general loss of grit among Americans. You look at pictures of D-Day and those guys storming out of the boats, and then you compare them to the ones playing video games in their parents' basement. I don't know, something's changed.
Let's move on in the interest of time. Traditional masculinity, Mitch, includes descriptions such as achievement, eschewing the appearance of weakness, the adventurous male, willing to take risks, even become violent at times. And the American Psychological Association has had these in the past in their description, even grit, I might add, since we've been talking about true grit. And these are described now as pathologies in certain situations as part of the new APA, American Psychological Association's newly released guidelines for psychologists. So it's gone from this something that we extol, these adjectives that we extol in the American male, to now pathologies. So this is a newly socially constructed male or masculinity. And now it's being associated, some of these traditional male ideas, adjectives, if you were, as contributing in some ways to sexual abuse, murder, poor education, mental illness, even suicide. So now we've got this term socially constructed, which is part of the umbrella term that the APA has put over some of these former adjectives. Are you as a man comfortable with this term, or does it remind you of the social justice police coming in, whispering in the APA's ear so that they rewrite adjectives that have been traditionally male? Do you think that's what's going on?
Well, I don't know if there's government money available. That certainly steers the direction of anything that these people come up with. Talk about a hot topic. This is being discussed all over the place, everywhere I go. To say that there's a war on masculinity would be an understatement. And the problem, I think, is it's getting so much coverage that it's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. It's funny. I noticed about 5 years ago something in watching television ads that struck me as odd. I began to realize that most of these television ads, the woman is smart and the man's kind of an idiot. And at first I thought, well, you're just being overly sensitive here. But I got myself a pad of paper and a pencil, and every time a TV ad would come on, if it was one of those, I'd make a mark. Well, by the end of the day, I was shocked. Now, I since went on to tell that to my mom and sister, who thought I was overreacting until they got out their pad. My sister, who's a very powerful, very successful woman, came back to me and said, "Oh, my God, they're all like that." And that was 5 years ago. And I said, yeah, being a man's not as popular as it once was. Well, now we've taken it to the extreme.
I particularly noticed that since you mentioned that. I've been thinking since you've been talking about this, getting out a pen and pencil, while I watched the Super Bowl commercials. Did you notice that? Not that every one of them was like this with toxic masculinity, the dumbbell guy, but there are ones that are. And it is a trend. Having said that, if we have this toxic masculinity, even defined with the American Psychological Association as associated with these negative things like poor education, mental illness, suicide, sexual abuse, murder, then what perchance is good or great masculinity or benign masculinity or anything with a positive angle to it? What do you suppose that is?
Well, I think traditional masculinity, one person's traditional masculinity is another person's toxic masculinity. And I think that's where the problem lies. It all depends on your angle and what you're trying to achieve. The thing that blew me away is that if you Google toxic masculinity or we need more of it, you get pages and pages of links. And Tammy Bruce, who's a radio talk show host, who just happens to be a lesbian, wrote an amazing article called "Without Toxic Masculinity, We'd Still Be Living in Caves." And it just struck me as ironic that we must be in a parallel universe when it takes a lesbian to explain the virtues of men. I mean, I never really thought that was going to be where we found ourselves.
Well, she's a very bright woman, and she, of course, likes to be known for her writing and what comes out of her mouth when she gives commentary. Not that she ever says, not that she denies her orientation, but that's not what is important to her when she appears as a professional and public person. So I think she's got all of this right. We're down to about 1 minute. Real quickly, is this toxic masculinity idea here to stay?
I don't think so. I think all we need is some sort of an attack or a national emergency, and all these snowflakes will be running around looking for some toxic masculine men to fix it.
We'll see what Megan has to say. Megan Porth joins us. She is an attorney and she is libertarian and she's a millennial, so she might have a different angle on all of this. Think America with Terry Gilbert. Find us at thinkamericaradio.com. Subscribe to our podcast, which is in the upper right-hand corner in the red a knob up in front. You can get all of our archive shows there. Be right back. Welcome back to the program. You're listening to Think America, Reason First, Then Converse. Megan Porth is with us on this very interesting topic between traditional masculinity and what the definition of that is versus what we hear a lot today on toxic masculinity. She is an attorney. She's a millennial. She's a mom. She is also one of the sponsors of the program. You can find her at yourcontractshop.com, one long word, online law office for all of your contract needs, small to large. Megan, nice to have you. What do you think about the APA, American Psychological Association's descriptions now that some of the traditional masculinity adjectives and things that we've traditionally associated with that brawny man, the heterosexual man, is now deemed pathologies that relate to and are connected to and contribute to sexual abuse, poor education, mental illness, murder, and suicide?
I have a lot of trouble with the idea of designating something that's masculine as being inherently negative, because I would never ascribe the same kind of analysis to the idea of something being feminine as being inherently negative. I think obviously with any kind of personality traits, you can work it to your benefit, right? There's good ways and bad ways to work certain traits. I think that there is a huge difference between what they have designated as toxic masculinity, which I would say are some of these things where it's violent, it's risky behavior, it's dominance. Those kinds of things I think would be easily designated as being toxic, but it's important to make sure that we don't designate masculinity as being toxic in and of itself, Terry, because not only will we rule out 50% of the population, but we get into that point where we're immediately placing blame and shame on half of the population. And we've already proven many, many times guilt and shame can be very dangerous in an environment and in the ways that it manifests in the human psyche. So I'm really disturbed by this concept that masculinity has all these negative connotations. I think that they can be worked in the negative, but I know a number of men in my life who are considered masculine, but also tap into what is considered traditionally feminine. I also have this an issue with the idea of ascribing very specific things to certain types of masculinity and femininity, because I don't think it's in a vacuum, Terry. You have certain, quote, masculine traits. I have certain, quote, masculine traits, and we also have feminine traits. It is a spectrum. It is not a vacuum where we can say, you are feminine, you are masculine. Because if masculinity has that negative connotation, then you and I also inherently have some of that in us, don't we?
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. The thing it boils down to is two things with me. Number one, it's the group think, and the American Psychological Association has kind of dropped itself into that world. Masculinity in general. You have masculine traits. I have masculine traits. I have feminine traits. I have childish traits, right, by the way, and so do you. All right, so it's the group think that bothers me. In fact, where is the individual in all this? And that segues into my other point, and that is, where's the individual personal responsibility that man, and it could have been a woman, could have been a child, murdered that other human being.
Exactly.
So, and as an attorney, I know in your justice classes and whatever it took to get through law school, and I'm sure you had plenty of them, of these classes in criminal law, we got to look at the individual. We got to look at the behavior as opposed to this big group think in how to define a person and then say that behavior always leads to poor education, mental illness, suicide, abuse, sexual abuse, murder, etc. This is what I don't like about this.
I couldn't agree more, 100%.
So what do we do about it? Do we change this social construct? And where are these words coming from anyway? Social construct, description of masculinity designed to pound men for toxic masculinity. I asked Mitch this earlier before you came on the air. He's our talker today. What then, pray tell, is good masculinity? If toxic is so bad, what is good?
Well, I don't think that the toxic is or good or bad. I just think that when we say that there is masculinity that is worked in the toxic, where you can take some of these personality traits and work them to the bad.
All right, let's segue. We're running out of time, and I want to get in change your life technology with you, Megan.
Well, as we all know, especially because we just finished Super Bowl, the NFL has not had an opportunity to improve those helmets for the past 40 years. And we have a lot of traumatic brain injuries for some of these football players. So one company has received a grant called Vices, who actually can create a flexible helmet called the 01. And it believes it can reduce the chances of a player sustaining a concussion. They have about $40 million in investments for the product. I can't wait to see the outcome.
That is so important because it's all in the helmet, isn't it, with regard to concussions. Appreciate you being on the program, Megan, as always. That's it for this edition. Thank you, Mitch, for being on the program and all your insight. I'm Terry Gilbert. Remember, reason first and then converse. We'll see you next time. Why go to the store anymore when you can simply order anything online? But psychologists say the outing to the marketplace is worth it. We'll discuss this. What are the Democrats doing about all this anti-Semitic rhetoric that's surfacing? They need to get a handle on that. Is the onus on women to protect their own safety? We'll discuss what Kamala Harris has to say about this one. Hello there, Terry here on Think America, where we reason first and then converse. I'm Terry Gilbert. I'm your host. This is America's Radio Town Hall. I invite people to come, everyday Americans, to come on the program with me as we talk about thought-provoking conversation starters. Today is no different. Mitch is with us. He is a small business owner of a videography production business. I welcome him to the program. He joins us from the Southwest. Hello, Mitch.
Well, good morning, Terry. How are you?
Nice to have you on the program. Megan Porth will join us later on, and we'll also have Change Your Life Technology. Let's get right to it. I want to talk, first of all, with you about whether or not it was a coincidence that President Trump, in his State of the Union speech, celebrated a Holocaust survivor, first of all. Second of all, an American GI who liberated his concentration camp, and a police officer, all of which were kind of his focus there for a while at the State of the Union. I think it was no coincidence. He did it on purpose as a way to address the recent string of anti-Semitic rhetoric by the Democrat socialists in Congress, which is even hard for me to say Democrat socialists or Democratic socialists. That's hard. It doesn't come trippingly off my tongue. I find it odd. But since Bernie kind of coined the phrase as a description of who he is, others have followed. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was in the state of jubilation, I would say, Mitch, when there was passed a resolution in support of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel at the 2017 convention. And then there is Congresswoman Omar. She recently, this past week, had to apologize for some of her statements that she said about the Jewish state, about Zionism, about Jews in general, and there's others. So let me just throw this out as sort of to get our conversation rolling today. What do you think the Democrats are doing about the rise of anti-Semitic rhetoric?
I don't think they're going to do anything about it. Look, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, they're all about winning. They don't really seem to care how they get there. I've decided they're the party of double standards. I mean, we're running around prosecuting all these Trump associates while we ignore Democrats engaged in the exact same activity. At the end of the day, the left at least appears to me to hate Trump more than they hate anti-Semitism. And I think they're also afraid to confront these new up-and-coming Democrats, because what if they are, in fact, the new face of the Democratic Party? I think at the end of the day, they'll accept anything if it means defeating Trump.
But they're not defeating him. Recently, the latest poll, I think it was Rasmussen, had him at 51%. He was coming off of the State of the Union. He has buckled down, put his feet in the sand, about a mark in the sand, I would say, about the border wall funding, and it seems to be working. This past week, he says, basically, I'll shut the government down again. And then that shutdown would be on the Democrats' shoulders. So, yes, they can hate him all he wants to, but he had a rally in Texas right there at the border. 35,000 people came out, and there's Beto in the split screen, Beto O'Rourke, and 300 people at best came out. So it's not working. Yeah, it's fine if you hate him, but it's not working politically.
Oh, I agree. Trump derangement syndrome's been a massive failure for them. I think they're focused on 2020. I think they've all but given up on getting much done now. But, I find this whole thing, there's always, the media decides what it is we're going to focus on. And they've been focusing on the anti-Semitism aspect of this. I wish they'd focus on the sheer ignorance of these some of these incoming people like Cortez. I mean, her Green New Deal. Wow, they took that down so fast I could hardly believe it. And then Omar's out there running around saying we need to eliminate DHS. Maybe somebody ought to tell her that FEMA and the TSA and the Coast Guard and the Secret Service and all immigration services are all underneath the DHS. You're just going to close that down and get rid of all of that. I mean, it's almost like they don't put any thought through this stuff. But I do know that our current crop of Muslim candidates, I mean, I know who contributed to them. It's largely CARE and various Muslim Brotherhood. So they're going to have to carry the party line, the people that gave them the money, which is ironic because unless I am mistaken, Omar, I believe, came up with the idea that it's these various lobbying groups that want to control this. Well, her lobbying group seems to be controlling her.
To Nancy Pelosi's credit, I think it was the other day, maybe it was earlier in the week, Nancy did condemn the saying of Congresswoman Omar with regard to her tweets about the Benjamins. a reference to Benjamin and one of the tribes of Israel from the Old Testament. So she continues to take digs. And finally, Nancy Pelosi, who is not getting along with some of these new Hanyakers, as it were, into Congress. I think Nancy did the right thing and tried to put down that rather evil, because she continues to do it. It's repetitive behavior, comments against the Jewish state, comments about anti-Semitism, comments about Jews in general, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, constantly doing this. So Nancy sees it for what it is. Now, my particular take, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, I'm not there in Washington, but I think these freshmen, young women in particular, are so emboldened. They're trying anything to sort of push their way in to get recognized. And of course, they do get recognized because it's different. So they get the cameras on them. And so they take chances. They take these risks. However, it's not good for the party. And I would like to see more of the Nancy Pelosi type saying, okay, we're going to slap down our little young whippersnappers here, bring them in, because Nancy needs to do that, at least in the House, and tame them for a while, because the party is overall being hurt by this. That was the only voice I heard this past week that's kind of slapping down the young munchkins that are coming up and really creating quite a stir in Congress.
Yeah, I agree. She's got a tough job. I mean, these people are coming in. They've got all these thoughts, and clearly they've never subscribed to the theory that the first rule of holes is to stop digging, because Omar is continuing to dig. I did see that. I thought I saw Gerald Nadler also come out against this. So, maybe this is the beginning. I hope so, because we have no place for this. We have a lot of things we need to address, and this is not one of them.
It's interesting, too. They will point fingers at Trump and the alt-right and say that Trump is to blame. And yet they're the socialists. It's not so long ago. I certainly remember learning about Nazism in school, National Socialist Party that then became fascist. So in some respects, that term has always bothered me. Why would you glom on to that kind of a term, Democrat socialist? It's this echo, and then toss the blame for when you get pushback from the right onto the alt-right, Trump and group. It's a very confusing thing, but like I was also taught in college, politics tends to be this kind of swing to the left, swing to the right. And if you swing too far to the left, as with socialism, you can make a circle and it can go on the opposite effect to fascism. So I think it's confusing. I don't think Bernie should have introduced himself that way. I think it is hurting the party. He now has followers, and when they get a lot of pushback, they then point the finger at alt-right Trump. And that is really, really not working in their advantage, in my opinion.
Well, that's a Saul Alinsky tactic. You accuse the other side of doing exactly what it is you're doing in order to keep everybody off balance. Look, they've been redefining their names. Remember when they were liberals and they decided that had a bad name? So then they became progressives. And now they're beginning to think progressives is getting to be worn out and having a bad connotation. So they're going to come up with their next new name. And maybe you just called it out as what it is.
Or leftists.
Yeah, well, that's what we've
But leftists are not liberals.
Yes. Yeah.
Leftists are very, very extreme.
Yes, they can go hard left. Absolutely. But, this is not just here in the U.S. I mean, the British Labour Party basically went down the same path. They've been doing a lot of anti-Semitic stuff, too. So it seems to be happening more than just here. But the thing that I don't understand, and I'll be very upfront about this, because I have a lot of Jewish friends and I keep asking them this question and I don't get an answer that I really understand. And that is, why is it that Jews continue to vote Democrat? I mean, the Anti-Defamation League, the latest time I saw this was 2017, said that incidents, anti-Semitic incidents were up like 57% in this country.
It's a bit of a mystery. It's mystifying to me. I know there's books written on this, but the upshot that I always get from scholars is that the American Jew, and this is really reducing it to very lay speak and putting it in a nutshell, but the Jew in America will side with the perceived underdog. So if the Black community is the perceived underdog du jour, they'll side. If transgenders are the perceived underdog, they'll side with them. If, and we had this on another show, drag kids are the perceived underdogs, they'll side with them. Women, perceived underdogs, they'll side with them. You get into this group think, and then they have been the underdog for so many years, centuries, that they will side with them. But it doesn't make a lot of logical sense. To your point, you're right. It can be very anti-Semitic. We're down to 2 minutes. I'll give you a wrap up on this.
Well, I think if we continue to get, I hate to single them out, but a lot of these comments are coming from incoming members that are Muslim. And I think we're going to continue to see that. I mean, that's the nature of their views. Now, one of them is now saying that, she's getting an education on some things and hopefully she's going to expand her views. I hope that's the case. But Edmund Burke once said, those that don't know history are destined to repeat it. And I hope we don't. I really hope we don't.
Well, the party is not strong if the freshmen are dominating it. And I would say to all of the more seasoned lawmakers on the Democrat Party in Congress, especially during an election year and the drumbeat to the election year next year, be the adults in the room or you will lose the elections, and you'll lose them straight across the board. You'll lose them in every municipality. You'll lose them statewide. You'll certainly lose them at the federal level. So that would be my recommendation. And by the way, we do see this every couple of years. We see more and more of this where the Democrat adults in the room need to shore up the whippersnappers, because if they don't, they're going to lose elections. All right. That's all the time we have on this one. One just final footnote. These policies, too, I wanted to get this in, it's making the Jewish community more and more volatile as well. You're listening to Think America. ThinkAmericaRadio.com is where you find our podcast and download all of them. You can get all of the archived shows and all of these thought-provoking conversation topics. Welcome back to Think America with Terry Gilbert. Reason first, then converse. Radio America carries us. You can find us at our podcast at ThinkAmericaRadio.com. Subscribe to all of our archive shows. All right, here's one for you, a little bit different. You won't read this in the headlines, Mitch. Why bother even going to the store anymore when you can simply order anything online? Now, my take about this is that certainly online is very convenient, especially if you need something, maybe not right now. Let's say you're ordering something and it'll arrive in a week or so. But using it always may mean that we are missing something in our everyday life by not engaging in the tangible shopping experience. So say some psychologists and even some sociologists. They encourage us to go to the marketplace, at least for the outing. And why? Because they say it's good to get out and be the social creatures we were born to be. Man is social, and we need to socialize. And this constantly doing it through a web site is not what we're meant to be doing. Do you agree with that?
Well, Terry, of course, my toxic masculinity has me out there hunting down something so I can, like shoot it, buy it and then tie it to the hood. So, yeah, I'm out there shopping. I still shop.
Do you like the tangible experience more than the digital, ethereal experience that you get on the web when you order something on the web?
I kind of like, I see them as kind of a hybrid. I see them both working in different areas. I mean, online shopping for me has been a mixed bag. In the beginning, it was like, wow, everything's a lot cheaper. But what a lot of us are learning is that online doesn't always mean it's cheaper now. And the second thing is you pretty much got to know exactly what you're buying. And then there's the obvious exception, like if, a pipe breaks in my house, I'm not waiting for Amazon to ship me parts. I'm going to go to Home Depot and get it done now. So I see benefits to both sides.
Well, I see some benefits to online. I see a lot of benefits to the tangible experience. I like going out. I like being in a brick and mortar store. I like feeling the fluffy pillow I'm about to buy rather than what they say it is, the description is, because the description can never be what I actually feel when I go into, a department store, sheets or even clothing. You order a silk blouse, for example, at least women would. Maybe you do too. I don't know. But with your toxic masculinity, I suppose you don't. But let's say you order a piece of clothing. You don't really get that same shopping experience, the same effect other than that you get when you go to a brick and mortar store. Even a dollar store, you think, I'm going to buy some, toothpaste. Yeah, you can buy it at Amazon. There's all kinds of toothpaste, but you get to look at the label better. I find that online can be a lot of stress because there's so many ads coming at me. It's visual overstimulation coming at me to get me to click here, click there, click, etc. Of course, then I don't have it right away. And if something were to arrive and then you got to ship it back, now I got to go down to a shipping facility, which is a brick and mortar place, to get it back. It's a pain. I'm not big on it. Plus, now you're putting a credit card out there in the ether world. It just doesn't. I've purchased some things online, but I just am not fond of the whole experience.
Well, it's been interesting to watch how online has also affected brick and mortar. I mean, more and more retailers are stocking less than they used to. I can't tell you how many times I've had them tell me, "Oh yeah, you can order that from us online." Well, I came to your store so I could pick it up and take it with me. And to your point, if you're any kind of a connoisseur, if you can tell the difference between one kind of sheets and another kind of sheets, handling them is a big part of making that decision. If you're somebody who thinks a sheet is a sheet, then I suppose online works for you. But I also find that if you need any kind of assistance, the whole online chat thing seems less useful than talking directly to
I find it terrible. I find it terrible. You wait for somebody to come on. Now you're getting somebody in India or somebody in Vietnam. Their English isn't very good. I just find it really a slog. Well, how do you think this plays out, this subject plays out with regard to people being social creatures? See, with the whole digital world, the whole computer world, and the world that we're in, we are being social to a screen. We are really being social to a robot. And I know this is where we're headed. We'll do other shows on artificial intelligence, and we've done other shows on artificial intelligence. But nonetheless, I'm not dealing really with a real person. I'm dealing with a text. I'm dealing with a person on the other end in India texting something to me, but it's not really dealing with that person. I'm dealing with a robot. So the social is transferred to a machine.
No, I think we're losing socialization. I agree with you completely. Get out there and talk to some people. I mean, first of all, it gives you the interaction. Secondly, it teaches you to think on your feet, and you keep that skill. This whole, I have interesting conversations with people who spend most of their time on a computer, and boy, their answers are short, and it's like pulling teeth trying to keep the conversation going.
Well, not only that, psychologists and sociologists, though they're not in the hard sciences, they do also say that sitting is the new smoking. Just constantly sitting and not moving and not getting out and walking around the mall and shaking people's hands and seeing the window shopping and having as they say in Italy, the passeggiata, where you're in the marketplace and you're interfacing with, other people. You can get to be quite a couch potato just sitting there looking at a robot and dealing with a robot. Not good. So I'm with them. I'm agreeing that psychologists and sociologists are telling us get into the marketplace, at least for the outing. All right. Thanks so much. Let's move on to segment number 3 straight ahead after this quick break. You're listening to Think America, thinkamericaradio.com. I'm delighted now to welcome to the microphone Diane Hamilton, who's no stranger to a mic. She's a PhD business management professional. She's a speaker, consultant for C-suite executives, and the author of a new book, which I really want to talk to her about her book, called Cracking the Curiosity Code. What's that all about? It's the key to unlocking human potential and the accompanying Curiosity Code Index assessment. In other words, how to get that curiosity that we're all born with out into the workplace so that your work is better and so the business is better that you're involved in. Welcome, Diane. Nice to have you. Thanks for doing the program.
Thank you for having me, Terry. It's so nice to be here.
Okay, I know your book is endorsed by Steve Forbes. He wrote you a nice review. Let's talk quickly about how to crack the curiosity in all of us so that business prospers.
Well, you know, it was really nice of Steve to write that review, and Keith Kroc behind DocuSign, the chairman of who just stepped down, also wrote the foreword. So I've had a lot of really great names behind it because they see the value of curiosity because it's the spark that leads to everything that everybody's trying to fix in the workplace. And you know, we've got problems with communications, we have problems with conflict, creativity, teamwork, engagement, you name it. All of that is all impacted by motivation and drive, and curiosity is the spark that gets you motivated and driven to do things. If we can work on curiosity, we can, of course, improve all the things I just mentioned, plus that all leads to innovation, which improves productivity, which everybody makes more money. So it's a win-win for everybody. But there's 4 things that hold people back, and that's what I studied with my research, and that's what the Curiosity Code Index that you mentioned is about. It's about measuring those 4 factors that inhibit curiosity, because once you know what's limiting you, you can move forward.
So what are those 4 factors?
Well, the 4 factors are fear, assumptions, technology, and environment. So basically, fear, we're dealing with fear of failure, embarrassment, loss of control. Nobody likes to look dumb by asking a question or posing a solution that makes them look bad. So fear is a real common one, but so are assumptions. Assumptions are the voice in your head that tells you, I'm not going to like this, it's not going to be interesting, why bother, your baby, it's just too much. And so you have these little voices that tell you these things, and that'll hold people back as well. And then technology can do things for us so that we don't learn the foundational aspects of what we need. We maybe didn't have exposure to it, or we find it overwhelming. There's just too much involved in it. And then we have environment, which is everything from your childhood, your parents, your siblings, your teachers, your work relationships, families, peers, friends, everybody that you could think of in your life impacts you. So, maybe your family always wanted you to do X, Y, Z, but you're interested in ABC. You just never know what it is that we're not being exposed to. And even if you were cloned tomorrow and put back in your same house as you lived in growing up, you would be a completely different person just based on a different teacher, a different this, a different that. So it's really fascinating.
It reminds me of when we're in school and we all are naturally curious, especially the younger we are, we're out there exploring our world. So it's a kindergarten kid that has no boundaries, no borders, no barriers. He or she is just exuberant with energy, and teachers love him or her. But then by the time we're in about maybe 5th or 6th grade, that same kid who would ordinarily not even raise his hand because he's just oozing with curiosity is told to put your hand down if he raises it, if he dare raises it, and sit in your seat and do it this way because this is the way we've always done it. And that can really squash a lot of curiosity. And then by the time he's in the workplace, maybe he's got fear that if he has a curious mind, he's afraid to show it. So how do we untap that curiosity, get it out of the bottle again with somebody who's been told to basically shut up and put up?
Right. And well, that's the key. And that's why I created the Curiosity Code Index, because once you measure it, the things that are holding you back, you can talk about some of those issues. You can create action plans. The training, I train HR professionals and leadership consultants in all organizations to do this. And actually, we're going to be in required reading in a lot of MBA programs around the world now. This is so important that they know that to be innovative, creative, this isn't just for the workplace. It's for anyone who's just maybe not they're stuck doing something they're not really loving. Once you learn to recognize some of these things that you're saying to yourself in your head, or that your environment has, in fact, influenced, then you can create goals and make them measurable to be more to solve some of the issues that are stopping you. Because there's two types of curiosity, and this is that trait, internal, specific, acquiring knowledge type of curiosity. It's very goal-oriented and problem-focused. And when we develop that only then can we work on all these other issues of innovation, creativity, engagement, communication, et cetera.
All right. So how does a boss see the guy that's oozing with creativity, calls the guy or the gal into the office and says, we love what you bring to the party, but we have to do it this way because of budget concerns, or because this is the way we've always done it, or because somebody in the C-suites isn't as creative as you and you would show them up. How does a boss deal with that so that the needle can be moved, there's purpose to the job, and as you said before, there's prosperity at the end for the whole company, shareholders, etc.?
Well, you just tied into a very important thing, is that leaders need to buy into the need for changing that status quo thinking. The way it's always done, to quote Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there. And you cannot ask Blockbuster, if it doesn't work anymore, you got to do something new, right? So you have to adopt a culture of innovation and allow people the freedom to explore questions, to provide solutions. And if you shut them down and say, we're never going to do that because we've always done it this other way, that's going to be a closed culture that's not going to become one that's going to hang around much longer. And that's why we're losing so many companies. And if you're a truly innovative person and you see that maybe you're aligned to the wrong company, you want to align your values with a company that shares the same organizational values.
And if you're not, you might have job security just keeping your hand down, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. People do feel very intimidated in the workplace in a lot of situations. And that's what I'm trying to change, because all that does is just hurts everybody and no one moves forward. And I really want to make this a more curious world, because you think of the top leaders out there, the ones who have really made it, the Warren Buffetts, the Bill Gates, they all tell you the top thing that made them successful is curiosity.
And I just want your take. It's the era of the woman. Do you find women are just naturally, biologically more curious? They can multitask better, et cetera, and therefore, because the glass ceiling has been broken now, they're going to be the next Steve Forbes. They're going to be the next Warren Buffetts.
Well, I definitely think women are curious. I think a lot of women, unfortunately, say they're sorry too much, and I think that they're trying to be people pleasers at times, and by doing that, some of their ideas get overlooked, and that's what I'm trying to change, because I think that so many women have just unbelievable ideas. Everybody's creative, and I tend not to stereotype men and women and different people into categories, but I've seen some unbelievably bright people be held back just because they don't want to rock the boat and they want to seem like they get along with everybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's true. And it's job security when you kind of don't rock the boat and you keep your head down. So there's risks involved in all of this, too. Diane, we're down to about 40 seconds or so. How can people find your book, Cracking the Curiosity Code, The Key to Unlocking Human Potential? And, of course, your accompanying Curiosity Code Index.
It's all at curiositycode.com. You can follow me on all the social media sites at Dr. Diane Hamilton. You can also go to my main website for my radio show and everything else at drdianehamilton.com. But if you go to curiositycode.com, you can find all the information of how to get the assessment, how to get the book. And if you're a leadership consultant or HR professional, I'll get you certified to be a CCI certified consultant.
Wow, that's my next life. I'm very curious. I'd love to work with you. Thank you, Diane. Really loved having you on the program. Diane Hamilton, Cracking the Curiosity Code. Thanks for being with us, and we'll be back with a discussion about this and another topic here on Think America. This is America's Radio Town Hall. You can find me at Terry Talk Radio, one long word, on Facebook. And you can find our shows and all archive shows at thinkamericaradio.com. Go to the red knob up on the top right-hand corner, click the podcast, and get all of our archived topics and shows. Mitch, what did you think of cracking the curiosity code?
Oh, I'm a big fan of curiosity. I mean, everything interesting that's ever been invented was done by someone who was curious. But I love the fact that in business, I mean, I agree with her 100%. You have to change with the times as a company. And one of the best ways to do that is to take advantage of people that are curious and have new and interesting takes.
Yeah, and then you have to be able to see that executed, visualized, executed. Otherwise, it's just an idea. And so often people are slapped down for the ideas as being pie in the sky, or it'll never work, the whole bit. Let me move on. Feminists like Senator Kamala Harris believe, Mitch, that encouraging women to take responsibility for their own sexual safety, as she says, is akin to saying if they are sexually assaulted, that survivors of sexual assault should not be blamed for the trauma they've experienced. All right. And why did she come out saying this? Because she was responding to a recent hearing being held to confirm the next person in the D.C. Circuit Court to fill Brett Kavanaugh's position before he ascended to the Supreme Court. And that woman, Naomi Rao was quoted as in Yale when she was a Yale University student in the early 90s in a piece that she wrote that women ought to watch out for themselves around those who might be sexual predators. Certainly, this is what I was always taught. You watch your back, you pay attention to your environs and so forth. But what Kamala Harris is essentially saying is the onus should not be on women to protect their own safety, particularly sexual safety. Now, this is bizarre to me. Of course, you're going to watch out, just like you watch out on the freeway when you're driving and be a defensive driver. Why not watch out? What is she getting at? That the onus is all on the perpetrator? The onus is on both. I mean, if you're walking down a dark alley and you probably shouldn't be because it's just simply not safe, why would you do that?
Like you, I'm confused. I'm a founding member of the party of personal responsibility, so I think people should always look out for themselves. And I mean, I look out for predators of all kinds. It's just prudent, and I'm a guy. What Kamala Harris has been trying to do, I think, is turn this into a no-win discussion. I think just because, look, we all know rape or any kind of assault is always wrong, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't reduce your exposure with some common sense actions. I lock my house. I lock my car. Doesn't mean I'm automatically blamed if the car is stolen. She's trying to make this about blaming women. I don't think it's about blaming women. I think it's about taking common sense precautions. And as you pointed out, I don't walk down dark alleys just because I can.
A while ago, maybe, 10, 20 years ago, I don't even remember when, but there was this feeling that if a woman is in the skinny black dress and she gets raped, she would have asked for it. And then there was this big backlash. No, she doesn't ask for it. She can wear whatever she damn well wants to wear. And while it is true that the rapist is the rapist, he or she performed that violent act, there was this pushback about, well, does that mean you can wear a bikini anywhere and not get looked at? So it's this idea of the onus being on whom for the act. And so I think what Kamala Harris is trying to do is saying, that's right. You can wear whatever you damn well want to wear. And a perpetrator is a perpetrator. And he's the one, typically it's men, he's the one that needs to be held accountable. So the onus is not on the woman. But it was a funny thing when she's responding to the woman, Rao, who is trying to get on the D.C. District Court to replace Brett Kavanaugh. It was a funny thing to hear because we all know at this point, rape is the violent action of forcing oneself on another person sexually. We've all known for a while that is a criminal action, regardless of how enticing that woman might be. And he or she has to take responsibility in court. So I think what she's trying to do is sort of equate that and say that has never changed, regardless of what Naomi Rao wrote as a Yale University student in the early 90s. which wasn't, by the way, that long ago.
No, I agree. Listen, robbery is a crime, but I don't walk down the street with a big wad of cash in my hand because that's a contributing factor to it. Kamala Harris was an interesting choice to lecture women on what's appropriate behavior, I thought. And it's just classic double standards of the Democrats. I mean, you saw it in the Kavanaugh hearings, and now everything's fine in Virginia.
We'll hear what Megan has to say. Megan Porth joins us. You know Megan Porth. She's a contributor, and she is an attorney on the program, and she will be up next to comment on this. She's also a libertarian and a millennial. We'll hear what she has next on this. Hold your breath. We'll be right back. You're listening to Think America, thinkamericaradio.com. Time for Megan, who is a contributor to the program. Megan Porth joins us now. She is an attorney. She's libertarian. She's a mom. She's a millennial. She's all things to all people. She's also the owner of yourcontractshop.com, an online law office for all your contract needs, small to large. Megan, what say you about this topic? We were just talking about whether or not Kamala Harris should put the onus on women to protect their safety or not. She kind of says not. The onus should not be on women. It's always on the perpetrator.
So I think, unfortunately, the issue that I always have with this topic is that it is again, argued in a vacuum. So we're only arguing whether women should be cognizant of their surroundings and where they're going and what they're doing and how they're acting and the people around them. Or we're talking about how the perpetrator should be held accountable and we should be addressing that issue. We can do both. It's interesting to me the way that politics becomes so partisan and so polarized this way, because you don't ever solve a problem. And this is one of the reasons why I love capitalism and why I love the free market, because we know as entrepreneurs and business owners, you never solve a problem from one side. And what she's saying here, Kamala Harris, is, I mean, clearly we all know what's happening. She's just simply trying to attack, rouse, her approach, right? I mean, essentially what she's saying is okay, well, this is something you shouldn't have ever written at any time because it puts the onus back on the victim. But that's not really what's being said here. What's being said is just simply that we live in reality here. You don't get to walk through certain dark streets in any country, in any city, and then not get possibly mugged, not get possibly raped. I mean, that is just how it happens. So what she's saying here is that, well, we should never put the onus back on the woman to protect herself, which is, in my opinion, anti-feminist. We actually should be empowering women to take care of themselves, to watch out for themselves, and to understand what reality actually is, not what Kamala Harris wants it to be. Don't get me wrong.
Be the helpless victim.
Exactly.
When I went away to college, my mother said to me, I want you to do one thing for me, Terry, just one. And I thought, okay, get straight A's, whatever it is. Don't marry the first boy you kiss, whatever it is. She said, I want you to take a self-defense class. I said, really?
Right.
She said, go and take a basic karate or judo class, but take a self-defense class. That's all I want you to do. And I did. And
of course you did, because it was the smart thing to do. That is the smart thing to do as a woman. And even as a man, Terry, right? This isn't isolated to just women. Men also need to be able to be cognizant of their surroundings and say, wait a second, this is not a safe place that I put myself in. Of course, that never excuses the actions of the perpetrator. That does not make it right. It doesn't make it just. It doesn't make it legal. But we have to live in reality. And that's where I think sometimes some of these people, especially when we're looking at the extreme left, and especially when we're looking at this polarization, which I call BS on, by the way, this is just a sleight of hand and a way to keep us distracted and a way for us to be arguing about this like we are right now. Really, the truth is that this is a platform for her to stand on. She's going to use this to get her into her presidential campaign, and she's going to say, I am the advocate for the woman. That is who I am here for. So no matter what anyone says, it is always, we're never, ever, ever going to put anything back on the victim.
I wonder if she would say the same with children. I mean, at what point, Megan, is a woman a woman? Is a woman at 12, at 13, at 18? I mean, right. I know 12-year-olds that are not women Would she say the same about a child who's 12 years old or a woman who's 12 years old? The argument is so flawed, you know, but I'm with you. This is her way to stand out. This is her way to be different. Right. Just like she said the other day, you know, I've smoked pot and I liked it, unlike Bill Clinton who smoked and didn't inhale and all that. And pot should be legal, recreational pot all through the 50 states. Well, that sure got everybody's attention.
Yeah, and this will too.
What do you got on Change Your Life technology?
As you know, Terry, there's a lot of issues regarding irises and people who have what are called obvious eye damage. These are things that are caused by birth defects, traumatic injury, melanoma, and even people who have albinism struggle with issues within their irises. So Custom Flex Artificial Iris has actually been approved by the FDA, and it's an iris replacement device that is surgically implanted into the individual's eye. And this helps a lot of people who have been born with either a partial or a missing iris, which affects 1 in every 50,000 people in our country. So it's really excellent. Now, also, this helps people who are looking to change their eye color, although I don't think that's going to be the predominant application here.
Oh, well, you never know. You never know. As soon as contacts are passé. Iris replacement, Custom Flex. Good stuff. You can find all the good stuff at thinkamericaradio.com. Thank you, Megan. Thank you to Mitch for weighing in on the program. We love that you've joined us from the Southwest. And to all our listeners and all those that write to the show, continue doing so at thinkamericaradio.com. You can find me on Facebook, Terry Talk Radio. Put that in the bar and you can find me where we discuss more of these topics. Remember, reason first and then converse. I'll see you next time.